Hey y'all. So today we're kind of continuing this deep dive into into space policy. We've been doing it for about 3 weeks now, and we've got a couple more videos to go on this topic. So bear with us. I realize that not all this space policy is as interesting as some of the other work that we're doing, but I promise you this stuff is important, and getting it wrong means we don't build anything. So the deep dive is worth it. So thanks for sticking with us on this. We are working on some more videos relating to LiftPort's history and the space elevator history. We love that you're watching this. We are really grateful. So thank you. Just a little over a month ago, the White House, the National Space Council issued this fundamental document that will influence basically every aspect, every actor in space. Whether your influence is from academia, civil like NASA or NOAA, or commercial like ours, or Made in Space, or SpaceX, or Blue Origin, or defense, U.S. Space Force and Air Force Space Command, so SpaceCom. This document has influence, and I would say control, over all aspects there. So it is worth the effort to kind of dig into this pretty deeply. We always focus on going to the moon for LiftPort, so if we're going to build out the lunar elevator, we really do have to pay attention to this stuff. So we're on page 6 of a 23-page document, and we're really starting to get into the meat of it now. So I'm glad you all stuck with us so far through the 7, 8 policy videos so far. But now we're starting to get into some really, I think, some really cool stuff. So stay with us, right? It's good. It's good, I promise. These are the things that we're going to be talking about next, focusing on how all of this stuff interplays one piece versus the other. Usually when we show this slide, Hardware Business Outreach and Framework, that is relating to LiftPort and our effort to build the lunar elevator. But in this context, this stuff really is very apparent, very obvious in this space policy document. So it's kind of comforting for us to know that, you know, the divisions that we have made, the federal government's also making. So that's good to see. Style-wise, I think that's good. All right, so let's get into it here. We've talked a lot already about the American presence beyond orbit, really focusing on commercial and international partners. The most significant undertakings in human history. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we're doing this stuff, right? This is the most significant undertakings in human history. It's one thing to go and do flags and footprints on the moon. That was really great 50 years ago, but now we're at a point where we can have sustainable, permanent human presence in space. We've done it for 20 years at the International Space Station, and the next steps, if you will, the next giant leaps, will really be about permanence on the moon and eventually permanence on Mars. So I don't think this is an exaggeration. I mean, this isn't the kind of language you see in dry, dull governmental policy documents, but just take a minute to let this sink in. The most significant undertakings in human history. I don't think that's hyperbole, and I'm really proud of this document for taking us on that journey. Now we're getting into the meat of it that's kind of dull, but still important. This document is a whole of government declaration that the United States government, all the pieces of it, are getting behind this effort to go first to the moon and then to Mars. And when they do that, we've talked a lot about private investment, private operations. There's this comment about diplomatic engagement. I'm going to hold that till a later slide here in a few minutes. And this international partnerships, same story. But what I want you to pay attention to is the last pieces: existing and emerging spacefaring states. All right, so you'd be surprised, but there's people in the world that think that Canada built the International Space Station because they built the arm on the space station. And the branding of that great big leaf of theirs on the International Space Station's Canadarm, some people think they built the whole thing. That's not true, of course, but there are a lot of existing space nations. Folks that never really get a lot of attention, a lot of press, but still significant players in kind of the global effort to go to space. You don't really hear very often about Brazil, for example, but they've got a solid Earth observation program. Same thing with several African nations. Nigeria and Ethiopia are coming along pretty quickly. Of course, and they would be examples of kind of emerging spacefaring states. Australia, as long as they've been in space, they were part of the original Apollo program back 50 years ago. If you've ever seen the movie The Dish, it's pretty worth watching. Australia's been involved with space really since the beginning, but they only just created an official space agency. So while they have legacy, they are in fact an emerging spacefaring state. So what this document is saying is that there are existing programs: European Space Agency, Japanese Space Agency, Indian Space Research Organization, CARI from Korea. There are programs that are already solid contributors to the global effort of going to space, and we're going to want to partner with them. But there's also developing programs that do have a significant role to play in the future. So I'm pretty excited when I see language like that. I've mentioned before my relationship to International Space University as the U.S. alumni president. So when I look at those kind of things, I look at who's existing, who's emerging, and how do they partner with an America that's going back to the moon in a really big way. So this next slide is pretty intriguing to me. It's actually really easy to ignore this next line. And I know some of y'all don't really want this line by line by line explanation of this document, but there's pieces of this that justify a per word examination of this document. And this is one of those sentences. NASA is and will remain the leader for U.S. government space exploration efforts. And departments and agencies have other departments and agencies will have increasingly important roles in space. What this is saying is that NASA is the leader. We all acknowledge that. But other departments will have a new expanded role. But the piece that I really want to focus on is U.S. government space exploration efforts. It is not directing NASA to be a leader in commercialization efforts, but restricting, I won't say restricting, yeah, I am, restricting NASA to an exploration role, right? Their job is to seek beyond the next barrier or the next horizon, right? That's what they're remarkably good at. I would argue there's no organization in the world that has what NASA is able to do. But this is saying NASA's role is exploration, and then other nations will take it, other departments will take it from here. I think that's really interesting. I think the verdict's still out. I don't know whether I really am happy about that or really annoyed about that. I'd really like to see how this evolves, but I want you to pay attention to this sentence, because this sentence impacts the rest of this document, and this document impacts the rest of the National Space Program, and the National Space Program has influence and ripple effects to the global space effort. So it is worth the effort to go into the minutia of this document, because this language bifurcates what NASA has been doing. They have been stimulating the commercial market. Well, now they're saying, good, just keep doing exploration, you're doing great at that, but the other departments and agencies will have a role in other aspects of going out to space. So pretty important one-line sentence in here that could have a lot of meaning. If you watched any of our other videos, you know that we're going back to the moon in a really significant way. There's 21 U.S. missions that are confirmed. Most of them are commercial missions, and then we've got 10 other international missions. 10 other international partners, in most cases, in many cases, going to the moon as well. So if you're not really sure what's going on with the moon, take a look at our other videos. We'll have a link below. But this is a pretty good primer. There's a lot going on right now.